Hotel India, hope you're all fine. I am Sai Krishna and I'll be talking about Hotel Alpha Mike Radio. Welcome to the Shack. The word ham, presently referred to operators, is derived from Hertz, Armstrong, and Marconi. The ham radio is a non-commercial licensed radio service enabling radio enthusiasts to provide emergency communication, improve their technical skills, enhance international connection, and have fun. It all began with the Radio Act of 1927 when the US government decided to allocate a certain amount of radio spectrum to the ham operators. Similar to the broadcast radio station, each ham is required to have a call sign like W2AEW, which is phonetically spelled Whiskey to Alpha Echo Whiskey during ham radio communications. Either to find an open frequency which no one's using and transmit saying CQ, a general call out to any station, and then await for a response, and then start peer-to-peer communication with the other fellow. And if it's a new communication that you've established, then it's proper etiquette to exchange addresses and send special type of postcards called the QSL cards. The equipment and cards belong to an inspirational ham by the name Hamid Demisovich, who migrates from the Eastern Europe to the US and stays active from 1920s all the way to the 90s, which is 70 years. Upon migration, he only wanted to do two things: get a US citizenship and a ham license. This is a record of all kinds of people he communicates with from his station back in LA. Notably, you see CQ in the place of call signs in the third column, which with remarks on the last column saying no one answered. That may be due to no one on the other end in the frequency. If you're about 12 years of age, in order to get the ham license, you'd have to appear for the ASRIC examination, which consists of two parts, and those consist of two parts each. The first part consists of basic electronics and regulations of ham. The second part consists of a practical examination, which requires receive and transmit to be done on the spot. And based on your performance, you either get a grade 1 or grade 2 license, which is either general or restricted. Restricted being that you don't require to know Morse code. It takes months to an year until the police confirms your location at your home, and then you get a license, upon which you can transmit ham signals, but hey, you don't need it for listening. UHF, VHF, and HF are three broad ways for ham communication. You can also see various bands, modulation schemes, transmit information allotted to general and restricted licenses in India. Two ways of talking a continuous wave of CW, Morse code, or your language. Latter, to avoid ambiguity, you'll need to use phonetic alphabets. W to AEW be like Whiskey to Alpha Echo Whiskey. And in the case of Morse code, the dots span 1 unit of time and dashes 3, interletter spacings 3, and interword spacings 7 units of time. So W to AEW would be like da 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 da. To quicken ham communications, the three-letter Q codes, they stand for standard information, can be used. Also, the CW abbreviations, again standing for standard information, can also be used. QRL would be, are you busy? Or QRO would be, shall I increase power? QCS would be frequency breakdown. QCX would be, what is your full call sign? QDB would be, have you sent message CQ to W to AEW? QRW would be, will I inform W to AEW that you are calling on 437 MHz? QRC would be, who is calling me? In the case of CW abbreviations, CQ would be a general call to any station. So there's no standard way of saying CQ, where usually people go like CQ, CQ, Whiskey to Alpha Echo Whiskey, calling CQ. Now I'll tell how hams can be replaced by your usual communication devices and how you can use it independently and pair it up with mobiles or PCs, and how it is cool in its own way. So let's jam. With no prior requirement of communication networks or power grids or company support, and will stop holding its duties while mobile networks are overloaded or much worse destroyed, ham radio can act as the most reliable last line of communication during crisis situations, floods, earthquake, tsunamis, volcanic disasters. So even now during COVID, hams are active, using drones and the ham network. Can indulge in search and rescue operations because the setup requires not a lot of time and resources as well. Plus you get to speak to people all over the globe thanks to ionospheric bouncing of HF or even asteroid or moon bouncing of VHF or UHF. Plus you get to participate in all sorts of radio sports like the Fox Suns, where once the radio body takes necessary permissions and formulates rules like the search radius around the Fox, transmit frequency and call sign of the Fox, number of transmissions, times and durations of transmissions, which start off at high power and long durations, so that at the start people far away can listen to it and start relocating their positions. And then finally ending with a high power suitable duration transmission where the Fox shouts that it has emerged victorious. Well, hey, in this game, either the Fox wins or the hams. So if you were to play the game, you need two people, one to hold the wattmeter, the other to hold the directional antenna, so you can find the direction of max Fox transmission. But then depending upon the weather conditions, you might circle the Fox multiple times before you locate it. Also, as you approach the Fox, you end up reading high power in a large width of azimuth, in which case using the nonlinearity, you could use the harmonics to your advantage. Also have a lookout for obvious indications of hiding the transmitter, aka the Fox. The first to reach there within the time limit wins. Other sports like PACC Contest 2018, IOTA Contest at Excel Island, Richie Shop, or ARSI Hilltopping Contest or others fall under the CQ contests or CQDX contests, or the CQWWCW contests, where you don't have to use a vehicle to relocate, but you'd have to establish a place and be able to contact as many hams as possible. The first to get the most within the time limit wins. Also, there are activities like communication with satellites during their passes, for which you need a dual band radio, a dual band antenna, and a duplexer to establish a full duplex communication. You also need a satellite tracker app like Heavens Above, in which you get up and down link frequencies, rise and fall time, pass duration. Also on the space chart, opposite the trajectory to your location, center of the circle, better, as the satellite passes right above you. To calibrate for the azimuth compass may be used for better accuracy. You'll also need a buddy for trial communications before pass. Also, a broken audio recorder would be good to record call signs, as it's already hectic with the antenna, the radio, the compass, and the mushy communication. Sometimes ISS downlink can be decoded to human viewable form via apps to view what's going on board the ISS. Radio Amateur Satellite Corporation, the AMSAT, is a worldwide group of hams that build nanosatellites, communicating in ham bands. A successful COMS TRX-RX is shown in the KISS frame between ASAT-1 and R4U. The moon-bounds or EME, Earth-Moon-Earth contact, allows you to use higher frequency bands like the UHF to communicate with hams, which were far away by bouncing signals off the moon. Well, to illustrate an example, you typically want an IF radio like the IC9700 that puts out lower frequency signal, which is fed via the BNC to the transverter, mounted to the back of the feed front dish, which is directionally calibrated via the gun scope to point to the moon. Also, the transverter upconverts it to say 10 GHz. A GPS frequency locker would be used to tune to the comms frequency instead of manually checking for a response beacon from the other side. A software like the open source WSJT is used for weak signal radio comms which needs to adjust for the Doppler shifts and provide corrections over the GPS locker. Also, inclinometers are used to change the horizontal and the vertical polarization of the antenna. The preamplifier takes a signal from the transverter like 2 watts and sends out like 60 watts power to the antenna. So you'd want a cooling system and you'd not want to be directly in front of the antenna. The sequencer and the safety interlocking mechanism would take the power from the PA and put it through the waveguide duplexing switch out to the antenna. There are a few radio stations, like the handheld radios. You'd be looking for a few features like a female instead of a male SMA connector. The central connector might get physically damaged due to overuse, and because you can easily replace antennas. You'd want a tri-band radio working at 2 meters, 70 centimeters, and 220 megahertz. The 220 because it needs to be populated. And then you want waterproofing, long battery life, and USB charging capabilities. You'll also want legit APRS, so it'll be easier during search and rescue operations. And rather than navigating through the settings, it's better to have a squelch knob physically present on the radio. Also, say you're trekking, rock climbing, or in a demanding crisis situation, you'd want a high contrast display. It's also better to have wideband receive with AM and SSB. Although it'll increase your cost, one digital mode is worth it. Finally, the radio should come with an easy-to-use computer programmable software, a CPS, like the Chirp software, which can be used on iOS, Windows, and Linux, which then gives the capability of using it on a Raspberry Pi, with the Raspberry Pi itself behaving as a radio. Then you have the base station transceivers with more power, more facilities, like the D4 building, S-Space Lab. You also have the mobile transceivers, which could be used in the car with the antenna outside. You want to use this for all your radio sports, and by tuning into the traffic police frequency, you could avoid traffic on many turns. And then you have the repeaters, which can enhance the range of UHF and VHF transceivers if the two nodes are separated by a building or a hill.